It's going to seem a little bit backwards, but it's the way that it works out. All right, I'm going to get this set up, try to get this going. Sorry guys, takes a little bit of time. It says it's streaming. I'm going to make sure it's muted, all of those things. Right. Hopefully you guys all had a great weekend. It's going to seem a little bit. All right, I see a lot of faces I recognize. It's great to see me. I'm going to set it so you guys can't unmute yourself just accidentally. I don't like that feedback coming through, all of that stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and start with the experiment first. We're going to go backwards, okay? So what we're going to do is a few different things. I've got a notebook here, the highest of Walmart quality. I'm going to take this off of here. Sorry to take this sticker off. Well, that doesn't unstick. Okay, so, hey, don't laugh at me. Few things. Okay, I've got a bunch of different experiments. I know, I understand. If you accidentally unmuted yourself, it's not that. It's just if everybody unmutes things, it feeds back. Like my voice feeds back into your microphone, which feeds back into my microphone and speaker, and it just sounds really annoying. So what we need to do is we need to set up our little filters first, okay? And so by doing this, what we'll do is I like to take a pencil to label what I've got. I'm going to label this, just so we know, black permanent marker, okay? I'm going to do red washable, all right? I'm going to do green washable here, and I hope this works. And then finally, I'm going to do the leaf here, okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to set up I can have multiple things running in here. The only problem is where we put our color on here cannot sit in the liquid because it will actually bleed into the liquid and it will stain everything. We don't want that. So here is what we're going to do. I'm going to start by doing the washable markers first, okay? So I'm going to set one up here with just water. And I only put a very tiny amount in there, enough to maybe cover the bottom, maybe a little bit more. Actually, I think I might have a little bit too much. Just enough to cover the bottom. I might even be a little bit too much. Hang on one second. I'll be right back. I'm going to dump out a little bit. Okay. I think I have just enough to cover the bottom. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my markers and I'm going to make a dot about, I'm going to use my thumb as a measuring or maybe a pointer finger. I'm going to make a really good thick line. Well, that's great, marking on that. My wife's really going to be happy with that one. Here, I'll use the back of this piece of paper. I'll be smart and not make a mess. Haha. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to make a nice, deep red line about, a centimeter wide and about a finger width above. And I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to see how well my paper towel works. Yes, this is coffee filter right here. I cut into a rectangle. I know it's hard to see, sorry. This is a paper towel. Notice it's thicker. I'm trying it. I don't know how well it's going to work. See, I'm doing science along with you. So I'm going to put a green line of marker there. And then what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and set these in my water because I know washable markers they're water-based. So I'm going to kind of take this in. I'm going to bend it just a little bit to make a little bit of a hook, and you'll see why that. I'm going to set it in my glass, and I'm going to see how I'm kind of setting it in my glass. It's a little tricky to see. There's a little bit of dirt because I have this. I'm going to set it in my glass so that the bottom is there, and then hook it over so that it stands basically straight up. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my red one over here. And I want the water to soak up the filter in the paper towel. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to kind of mark that. And then I'm going to let that run as the water soaks up this. Now notice, is my line sitting in the bottom of that. Is my line sitting there in the bottom? No, I want it away from that bottom. And look, this is already taking off. Holy cow, look at that. Okay, yeah, it's not sitting. Take a look. It's going to keep going. I want it to kind of stand up as straight as I can. When it gets going, it's going to look awesome. I'm going to set that off to the side. Actually, that's doing exactly what I wanted it to do. Okay, set that off to the side. Let it go. That's one thing I'm going to test. The next thing I'm going to test is I'm going to use permanent markers. So in my other one, I'm going to make maybe 2/3 to 1/3 rubbing alcohol to water mix. Okay, a little bit more rubbing alcohol, because I know permanent marker does not wash off with water. So I've got two different brands of marker. I've got these Sanford ones and I've got a Sharpie. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a dot. Okay, I'm going to go about a thumb distance above, or a finger. I'm going to make a dot. Over here is Sanford. Okay. And we kind of had this discussion in another class when we talked about colors in, I think, 4th grade. And is every shade of black the exact same? And the answer would be no. So I've got two different types of black markers here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put it in here. I'm going to let it sit. I'm going to kind of angle it until it gets going. I'm going to let it sit and let the water and alcohol go upwards. Now, one other thing you're going to do is one other thing to try, and you can try whatever colors you'd like to do. The neat thing to try, and if you ever want to know what colors your leaves will turn in the fall, what you'll do is you'll take a coin. You're going to take a leaf and you're going to kind of rub the green off of there. And I'm just going to make a big green splotch as best as I can. See, I'm making a big green stain. So I want this to be as nice and green as it can. I'm just scraping along it. Yes, I'm going to tear my leaf, and that's okay. So I'm kind of trying to take that thin layer off and get that. Ooh, that looks pretty good. And notice, ooh, look, I even made it nice and thin. It's almost like a see-through leaf. Cool. Did a good job there. I did it something good for once. And if you just kind of scrape it, kind of like you were scratching a lottery ticket, not that you should be scratching lottery tickets, but you might have seen somebody do that before, right? I've got this big chunk of green color from this leaf. Now what I can do is I can wait as this sits in that rubbing alcohol. And while it sits in that rubbing alcohol, guess what? It will show me what colors it will turn in the fall. And you may say, Patrick, you're nuts. And I would say, yes, I kind of am. And that's okay, because that's what science is. And so I'm going to drop a little bit of rubbing alcohol on there to speed it up. I'm going to set these off to the side. And I'm going to put this over here so I don't make too big of a mess. I know, it's an interesting thing. You didn't think about that, but we're actually going to talk about why this will actually work for us. It is. It's an interesting thing, and we'll let it sit. And the neat thing is we can predict. Now, I have a maple leaf, okay? And if you have maple trees, and I know I went through that kind of fast, so I'm sorry. I'm setting it up so it runs. It takes about 5 to 10-ish minutes to get there. No, not maple syrup. I don't have maple syrup trees. Those are completely different. Those are a sugar maple. Don't have any sugar maples here. I've got a couple silver maples and a, I think fire maples. So those are not your sugar maple trees. All right. So when we look at this, if I knew how to make maple syrup, I'd be not here. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for a while. They're going to run. And what's going to happen is we're going to use the capillary action. Okay, capillary means that sucking up method that water does and alcohol does up the paper towel, and it fills in all the little pores. Is it works weirdly against gravity. And by using rubbing alcohol and water, we're going to separate out all the different pigments, the colors that are in each one of these markers and the leaf. Now, the leaf is tough to see because it is a little bit more faint. The black permanent markers work awesome. Gray permanent markers work great. Washable blacks and actually I'm having really good luck with this red marker. Okay, the really strong blues are great to do. Greens are awesome to use. You'll see why it works really, really awesome. And actually, I'm looking at the red right now. It is doing exactly what I hoped it would do, and it looks phenomenal. Which you're going, Patrick, how could that happen in 5 minutes? I know what I'm doing, at least temporarily, okay? So why is this all important, okay? When we do chromatography, this is what we're talking about, okay? Good old Adam Sandler and Billy Madison. I don't think it'll work. No, it's not gonna work. Darn it. He has a very famous quote, one of my more favorite quotes. It's chlorophyll, it's more like borophyll. And you're going, yes, plants are boring, okay? Right now, our leaves are coming out of the budding stage in almost every single green leafing plant, okay? Except for maybe well, my oak tree is starting to leaf out. It's a little bit slower. Walnut trees, elm trees are a little bit later. Right now, my silver maple sitting, the 2 big ones I have in my yard, are already pretty much full of leaves and are just going to get more full of leaves. They seem to, maple trees seem to bud early for leaves and then fall early. We'll get there. All right. So the other thing is, when you look at your leaves, some of you know with trees around you what color they might turn in the fall. If you aren't sure what type of tree you have, number one, you'll need a tree identification guide. But number two, you could figure out what they actually turn in the fall based on the pigments that are actually hidden under the green part. Because what plants are doing is they're coming out of the dormant phase where they had all the stored energy in their roots. And now they need a food source to keep growing and developing. And the only way plants get foods, because I don't see too many plants and trees with arms and grabbing hamburgers, the only way they can do this is through photosynthesis, okay? They do photosynthesis, just like SpongeBob does photosynthesis, and they change light into food. Without plants, I think we discussed this when we talked about populations, without plants, we don't have life, okay? They are the only thing that we have on the earth that can take solar energy and turn it into a food source. Nothing else can. Well, besides photosynthetic bacteria, but they're too small and we don't need to worry about them. Plants are the only ones that consistently can do that. We can't do that. Other things can't. Without plants, we don't survive. Okay? This is kind of backwards. So when we look at our leaves, we can predict what they'll look like. Right now, pigments are being hidden underneath the green chlorophyll. Chloro meaning green, phyll meaning chemical, okay? When you look at this, okay, so just so you know real quick, okay, chloro means green. So if you were to ever look at, see, chloro means green. If you ever look at chlor and chlorine gas is actually a really nasty green gas, not good, okay? So if you ever see a green gas leaking, run, because it is very, very toxic and very dangerous to your system. It's chlorine gas. You don't want that. Okay. When we look at all of these things, we can see some colors. You'll see some reds. You'll see some oranges. You might even see some yellows. Sometimes you'll see a lot of browns. The weird thing about Nebraska is we have a lot of trees that don't put off a whole lot of really bright colors. We have a lot of trees that are late bloomers because of when our spring is. And when they go dormant, they just kind of go to brown, and brown means that the chlorophyll is just dead. No, unfortunately, Marcy, mayonnaise is not an instrument. Good guess, but no. Okay, thanks for the reference. I love it. Anyway, so the weird thing is anthocyanin, we'll see some. You'll see those in like dogwoods, sumacs. Some fire maples are a nice reddish color, okay? Other thing is what we tend to see a lot of are yellows. Yellow is what's called xanthophyll. It's what we see in our corns. It's the actual stuff that colors our corn. So ash trees, it says ash, birches, aspens, and oaks. Not a lot of oaks around here are yellow. Most of them are brown. Yellows, I know there's a birch tree a couple houses down from me. It turns yellow. Birches are the ones that have the paper on the outside, right? But the ones that we see a lot of is we see a lot of carotene or carotene. Those are the things that we find in carrots. Carotene, carotene comes from carrots. That's why it's named the way that it is. Okay. We see some, like I said, we see some red, mainly in sumacs. Those are the little shrubs on the side of things, dogwoods. We see some yellows, but not as much. We don't have a lot of aspens. We don't have as many ash trees anymore because the emerald borer is around now, which is destroying ash trees. Okay. We see some oranges, especially in our maples. I see a lot of yellow in the silver maple trees that I have. Some oranges because I have one fire maple tree, which is orangish red. Okay, but most of the other leaves are a really blah brown color. And that's just the way it is. That's the type of things that live here. So there's your little random thing. What we should be able to see is how all these pigments get broken up. You could do this with basically anything you kind of wanted to. You could put M&Ms in water and let the pigments float out from there. A lot of times you see this done with Skittles. You can try it. Because all of those food dyes like yellow 5, red 2, all of those things are pigments. Most of them are artificial, but a lot of times we can get natural ones too. So let's take a look at what we see. All right, I know this is kind of short and fast, but it's a fairly short and fast lesson. This might be the 1 week. Next week will be a little bit longer. So let's go back to our camera here. Let's go to screen number 2 over here. And what I'm going to do is, here is my green, okay, my green paper towel pigment. And if I look at it, there's not much in there, is there? Not a whole lot. Put that on my hand. A lot of the green pigment floated up here. I was hoping maybe I would see some yellow and some blue. I kind of see a tinge of blue here, but it's not separating out as great as I wanted. Okay, this one didn't work out as good. Sometimes, you know what? These are going to fail and fail miserably. Trust me, those 5th grade teachers who are in here and you've seen this lesson and we do this, it fails miserably quite often. But the one I'm most excited about is this one. Check this one out. Here is that red that we started with. Okay? If you notice this red from Crayola, oh, sorry, my bad. This says pumpkin. I didn't realize this is a reddish orange. Okay? So it's more of a reddish orange. What does it show me? Well, I'm getting a whole bunch of reds and yellows on there. Why am I getting a lot of reds and yellows? Because oranges are red and yellow based. Look at this. I've got yellow up top and I've got reddish down here. Well, that means is yellow is a lighter pigment. Red is going to be here. But also think about the rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Okay, it actually fits just like the rainbow. Red will be closer down here. Purple will be up here. A lot of it has to do with the weight and wavelength of light. We kind of talked about that a little bit. I love this one. That one actually turned out, teachers and student and those of you who are with us, this actually turned out much better than I could have actually hoped for. I would remember indigo, but I'm not counting it today because I'm not counting it today. Now, these were just watercolors. Could you test any color you wanted? Absolutely. I'm not 100% sure why I didn't have much luck with this. I don't know if it was the paper towel or if it was the color. Who knows? Sometimes you just have bad luck. But I know that blacks, oranges, usually greens give you good results. Now, let's look at our black permanent marker. Okay, on the left, you will recall the left was my Sharpie. On the right you'll notice it was the Sanford king size. And what you should see, and I noticed this is the wildest thing about Sharpies that are black. Notice what color they actually are. They're not black pigment. They're not. Look what it's made up of. A lot of purple. There's a little bit of blue up here. And if you could see it, and I can see a little bit of a reflection if you dried it and have brighter light, this actually is slightly, it kind of has a slight yellow tint to it. Yellowish green up here. It's tough to see, okay? Kind of looks like purple flames coming out of there. It's amazing. But look at the other brand of marker. This brand right here, the Sanford one, okay? Look at the difference that I've got. It's a little bit, it's a lighter color, not as strong, but look what it's mainly made up of. I see a lot of browns. Yeah, it is kind of pale, but also if I were to put it against this black background, you can kind of see, or my hand, you can see a lot of weird, and I could see it, a lot of yellows and oranges are kind of snuck in there. It's really strange. And when it dries, it actually shows up really nicely. Yeah, see, there's a little bit of orange here, and a little bit of yellow up here. See, this is purple, and there's some bluish green up here. So you're getting these wild differences. I had two markers. See, I had two markers right here. This one and this one. Both are black, but they're not made of the same pigments, okay? Two different companies, two different types of pigments. Wild, okay? Try that with, this is why I use the rubbing alcohol, because we know Sharpies do not wash off with water. We have to use rubbing alcohol. So use rubbing alcohol. Let this sit for, oh, I can kind of see a yellow fade in there. Okay, let it sit for a while and let it go. You'll get these really, really neat results. The one that is really neat to do, and I know this is strange, if you have it, do a gray Sharpie. Do a gray Sharpie, because it gives you a really, the pigments that make up the gray color don't make any sense at all. Okay, some people have some that are already done. Great. I know some of them go really fast. The permanent marker and rubbing alcohol goes a little bit slower. The rubbing alcohol slows it down just a little bit. Okay, now I hope, oh yes, it did work. Hooray, it worked. Check this out. Okay, here is our leaf pigment. Okay, take a look at the leaf pigment. What I've got is this. I started with a whole bunch of green down here. What color is actually falling out of my green leaf? Got a whole lot of yellow. Yeah, you're still going to see some green, but a lot of it's going to be yellow up here. So what color will my maple leaves turn this fall? If I put it together, based on this color, my leaves will turn a yellowish color, a yellowy green in the fall. So you could do this with basically any leaf that you can find, okay? Good ones to try. I know walnut leaves, if I recall, my walnut trees usually turn a yellowishy brown. That's a good one to try. If you know where birch trees are, those will be yellow. If you know what fire maples look like, they're usually the bigger leafed maple leaves that kind of look like the Canadian flag leaf. Those are good ones to try. Oak leaves are going to leave you with brown spots, and so that's not really exciting. Other good ones, other good examples. Elms are mainly brown. There are some other interesting ones. If you know what, if you just take a leaf from any one of your trees and try it, notice what I did is I just made a little solution here. The only thing you want to be aware of, though, okay, the one thing you want to be aware of is when you do this, notice I kind of have a little bit of ink and things from here. If I were to let this sit down in here, all of the pigment would actually, notice it's diluting out into the the rubbing alcohol. And if it does that, it kind of ruins everything. Okay. So you can try this with a whole bunch of different things. You can try it with different colors. You can try it with different marker types. And what I would suggest doing is experimenting with this, because next week, I would like you to try using watercolors. Watercolors work a little bit better than permanent ones, but permanent markers give you a little bit better, give you a little bit bolder colors because they're much stronger pigmentation. Maybe, okay? They'll give you a better, stronger thing, because those of you who are in Fairbury, you probably did this before, but I think with Miss Urian's class, I think it didn't work out the best because some of the markers didn't work. Dry erase markers won't work. Highlighters work, but they're very faint and hard to work with. They're a very different chemical like composition, different pigments, like the pigments that make up this are harder to get rid of than others. Okay. So focus on that, because we're going to take this, we're going to use a little bit taller cup, and we're going to take it and make some scientific art out of it. Those of you Fairbury students, you'll remember it's filter paper flowers. So next week, you'll need 1 full coffee filter. If you have the really good thick cone filters, they work really well for this, especially if you have the thinner ones work pretty well for filter paper flowers. The thicker cone ones work really well for this activity. So it's a good thing to test with. You'll need, if you have a pipe cleaner, great. If you have string, that'll work too. And we'll show you how to do this. We'll kind of set it up, and you'll have to finish it on your own. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recordings. All right. Make sure I've got everything going here. Click all my buttons. Otherwise, guys, that is really all there is to it. This one's pretty short and simple. There's not a whole lot to it. If you have questions, feel free to ask those things. You can unmute yourself if you have questions. Just don't fire them all at the same time, because otherwise I'll get confused. So otherwise, guys,